Welcome back to Indie Comics Corner. I'm Chris, and today I'm going to talk to you about the books that I read in September, or at least the books I remember reading in September. I didn't track this, but going forward I'm going to. The reason I want to do this is because I want to be able to talk about more of my collection. I don't have a lot of time to really focus on everything that I have or everything that I want to talk about, and I also don't see myself dedicating a lot of time to things that I didn't enjoy. Whereas this, I can just do a bit of a quick overview of the things that I've read, which can include my thoughts that are good and bad. So with that in mind, let's start with Upgrade Soul, a book I really did not like. So Upgrade Soul is about an elderly couple that participate in a very experimental cloning procedure where their consciousness will be moved into younger, stronger, more improved versions of themselves, and then they can continue to live their lives with these new bodies. I think I'm definitely in the minority as far as YouTube creators go with this book. Like I said, I didn't enjoy it. I'm going to talk a little bit about why, but if you've not read it, a lot of other people say go into this blind, so I think as much as I've told you is as much as you need to know to decide whether or not that sounds intriguing to you. But if you do want to hear my thoughts, I probably will spoil some stuff, so if you don't want to hear what I'm going to say, I'll put a timestamp down below so you can just jump to the next book. Alright, assuming that you stuck around, let's talk a bit more about this. So obviously the cloning process for this book doesn't go exactly correctly. Instead of these younger, stronger, better versions of themselves being created, they are younger, they are stronger and more intelligent, but they're also deformed. And the other issue is their consciousness didn't get transferred to these bodies. So now we have two pairs of the same person. So we've got the elderly versions, and this process has also really severely impacted them mentally and physically. And then the younger versions that have their intelligence and more so, they have their strength and more so, but their bodies are very deformed. They have not correctly created these people. So the scientists are kind of left in this weird sort of, do we kill the elderly people and have these younger versions of them go and live their lives? But because they didn't turn out correctly, it is a failed experiment. It's not what they need. So do they kill them? But then we've got these elderly people that have now been very negatively impacted, and it also hasn't worked. So it's a lot of this sort of moral dilemma and ethical side of things coming into it, but that's kind of as deep as it gets. I just felt like everything was very surface level. It was as what you expect to happen is what happens, and we end up with the female clone killing herself because she doesn't want to live this way, and then the male clone starts being more violent because he doesn't want to be killed. He starts to realize they'll probably get rid of him and they'll start over again, so he lashes out and then eventually escapes. But it just is all very surface level. Nothing that interesting happens. It doesn't ask many, to me at least, didn't ask many philosophical questions, or like, you know, what does it mean to be yourself? You know, are they still themselves if they were a clone? It didn't really get into that, and I just thought it was a bit bland, I guess. I thought the artwork overall was pretty good. I just felt like it lacked a sense of emotion, because we see a scene where the male clone attacks somebody, and it happens over a series of panels, and it looks like they're just slowly walking towards them and then debilitating them in some way. And it just didn't seem like a threat. The other person just didn't react. I don't know, it was just a bit weird. And then at the end, the male clone, he dies in a car crash that is like 3 panels of just like this slow, almost stop motion crash that just doesn't look like it should have really killed him or done any damage to anybody. I don't know, it just felt like everything just kind of got tied up weirdly at the end for me. It wasn't for me. If this still seems like something you're interested in, because there is just a lot of praise for this online, go check it out. So I read Upgrade Soul because it was part of the Evergreen series that Name and Condition do, these live streams. And the one was about the top 10 books that every library needs to own. So the next book I was going to read was Blankets. And I was a little nervous because I didn't enjoy Upgrade Soul, but I thought I'll give it a go. I still see lots of praise about Blankets by Craig Thompson. And that one was spectacular. So Blankets is about Craig's life growing up in his household, in a very religious household, with a young brother, and eventually experiencing his first true love, and doing that long distance, and kind of the relationships that he has around him, and figuring out who he is and how his religion impacts him and how his family life impacts him. This really stuck with me. My wife is American, and we did long distance for about 3 years when I was of a similar age as Craig was when he was doing long distance. And so reading it and seeing all these awkward moments and all these great moments and this sense of romance and love and excitement when they eventually get to see each other again, that really, really hit me. I really connected with that. I loved it a lot. It's one of the best books that I've read in a really, really long time. The religion side of it, I didn't grow up in a religious household, and so that wasn't as impactful to me, but I grew up in a religious area and with religious people around me, and so I did sense and feel some of that aspect of his life, but it definitely wasn't the same. It was very much the long distance relationship and that first love feeling. I also have a younger brother, so seeing the silly things he and his brother would get up to, again, I was like, hey, that was stuff that I used to do as well when I was a kid. I really, really would recommend Blankets. Honestly, it's one of the best books I've read in years. I think if I was to do a proper top 10 and really think about my favorite books of all time, Blankets would probably be on that list. So up next was On a Sunbeam by Tillie Walden. This is a sci-fi romance story, again kind of that exploration of young love and relationships and finding your place in the world, and in this case in the universe, and also sort of this idea of a found family more than your actual family. The book is split between 2 different time periods in this same girl's life. So we join her at points when she's at school and she's making friends with a girl that she eventually develops feelings for and has a relationship with. And then also we jump between that and the future where she is working on a ship traveling the galaxy and working with a group of friends, fixing up old ruins and helping planets in the ecosystem and things like that. And so we bounce back and forth between these two until eventually those 2 areas kind of come together when she realizes that she might be able to rekindle some lost relationship or friendship with the girl that she was in a relationship with when she was in school. This was a really just delightful book. It was an easy read. The artwork is just spectacular because it's this galaxy and it's Tillie Walden. It's so colorful and creative and everything just has this kind of ethereal nature to it. It feels very dreamy. It was a really enjoyable read. I think it's definitely worth checking out. It's enjoyable, it's fun, it's silly, and it's cute, and it's just a good read. After doing the video talking about my favorite books of James Tynion IV, Tynion, I don't know, I think I was saying it wrong in the video as well. But after doing that video, I realized it had been a while since I'd read Something is Killing the Children, and so I decided to read both deluxe editions 1 and 2. So I'm not going to go too deep into these books because I have already covered them in that video. But it is a really enjoyable series that's mysterious, has great horror elements. I probably should have read them this month in October, thinking about it in hindsight, but having talked about them, I really want to get back into them. I hadn't read the second deluxe edition, so it was kind of cool to see the next steps following the Archer's Peak saga. And it's just a really enjoyable story. It's less mysterious as you go on because you start to learn more about the houses and these different groups and the masks and all that stuff, but it still has a great level of like horror and overall intrigue and mystery just for the actual thing that she's dealing with. Because if you're not aware, the story is about a girl called Erica Slaughter that kills monsters. These monsters are manifestations of children's fears and they come to life and kill children. She and her organization deal with that. They handle the monsters and then they also handle the fallout that can happen because of that. At the end of Deluxe Edition 1, she realizes that she wants a bit more. She doesn't want to just scour the land and kill monsters, so book 2 is her trying to do a bit more and trying to cover more bases and help more people. So it was cool to see that and see the new characters and how that stuff might develop and which direction it feels like this series might go. I know that they've just listed the House of Slaughter, the kind of the side stories as a deluxe that's going to come out next year. I've heard some mixed things about that. I'll pick it up and I'll check it out, and then eventually I'm sure there'll be a book 3 that's deluxe for the main story as well. So I'm probably just going to keep reading it in this format. I'm no immediate rush to start reading it like every month, but it's still a really good series and I'd highly recommend it. Again, another book here that I did cover already in a different video where I was talking about some hidden gems, and that is Space Mullet from Daniel Warren Johnson. I finished the first book. I really wanted to read more of it. I know that it's all available online on like a webtoons or his own personal website, so I will have to check that out at some point, but I'm also really hoping that he continues it, they make deluxe editions, all that stuff far from the future. Probably not going to happen at the moment because I know he's very busy with Transformers and all the other stuff he's got going on, but yeah, this was a really great series. There's a cool kind of space opera, almost Firefly sort of vibe to it if you've seen that show. We follow a guy traveling the galaxy with his kind of best friend alien. He's an ex-Marine. He was involved in some pretty bad stuff, and that past starts to catch up with him. he didn't do anything bad, but he's kind of privy to it, and they're trying to tie up loose ends. So it's about him trying to escape, and then inevitably bigger picture stuff happens, more characters get involved, it becomes a much bigger series and sort of involvement of him and the main character than was intended to be. But it's really good. It's just a great series. Daniel Warren Johnson, I don't think I've read anything of his that I haven't thought was spectacular. His artwork is always mind-blowing. I constantly say it, but the sense of kineticism and impact and movement, I've never seen someone do it better. I really want to read, again, Do a Power Bomb. It was one of the best books that came out a couple of years ago, and that has the same stuff. Loads of impact, loads of hard-hitting moments. You actually feel the action, and it's kind of a rare thing. I feel like we don't see as much, except for with Daniel Warren Johnson stuff. I'm sure there's other people that do work just as well as that, so let me know down below if you have any suggestions of people I'd like, if that's my sort of thing. But yeah, Space Mullet, spectacular, definitely check that one out. Up next is Plastic. This is another one that I had spoken about on a previous video, same video as Space Mullet, because I wanted to reread these books that I was talking about. I was getting excited while talking about them and writing scripts, and I thought I should just go back and reread these, so I did. So again, I'm not going to go too deep because I've talked about it already a bit, but Plastic is about a serial killer that is on a road trip with his love interest, who is a human-sized doll woman, and she is taken by some ruffians after he gets involved in a bit of an altercation with them. He then has to go on a mission to reclaim her and kind of make the people pay that initially took her in the first place. Such a weird book. It's so bizarre and it works so unbelievably well. The amount of care and emotion and just heart that's put into this from Doug Wagner is crazy. It's such an intriguing story and you really love all the characters. It shouldn't work, but it really does. There's a sequel series that's just been, I think, about to wrap up. I've got that pre-ordered, I'll get that in trade. I don't know if there'll ever be a deluxe edition of that. I have a deluxe of Plastic because I backed their Kickstarter, but I'm happy to have it in any form they'll give it me. So up next is something that I've been dipping my toe into recently, and that's the world of manga. I've been reading some stuff like Vinland Saga and the Gotanabe Lovecraft adaptations, and Chris from Off My Shelves has recently been recommending Search and Destroy, which is an adaptation, like a retelling of a different manga series that I'm not familiar with, so I'm not even going to pretend like I understand any of that world to even start explaining it. But he recommended Search and Destroy, and it's a really good book. So it's set in this sort of cyberpunk future, bit dystopian, where there are humans and there are creatures which are some sort of android, cyborg type of synthetic characters that live within the city. There seems to have been some sort of war between the two, and that war is over. We follow a young girl who, when she was like just born, brand new, had a lot of her body parts removed from her. I think 48 different pieces of her were taken. Her eyes, her tongue, her fingers, and these creatures had them adapted because they wanted to experience real human things. So there's one that wants to taste food, and so it has her tongue. There's one that wants to see the beauty in the world and has her eyes. So she has been modified, and she's effectively a cyborg herself, and she is so full of rage and anger towards these creatures. She is initially living up in the mountains with somebody, but then a bunch of stuff happens up there, and she ventures into the city to reclaim her lost body parts. So it's just kind of her story of revenge and trying to reclaim her humanity, because she's become effectively a feral killing machine. And obviously she wants to get revenge and payback on these things that did this to her, but also get that stuff for herself, get the beauty back, get the ability to taste things back. This is a really cool book. It didn't work for me as much in the first, I would say third. I was reading it and it's a very fast read, so I wasn't too bothered to keep going, but I was like, this is fine, this is fine. And then as you start to sort of experience her life when she lived up in the mountains a bit, and you see her relationship with somebody else, I really started to connect more with her and understand her motivation a bit better. The action throughout was spectacular. So far there's one book that's been released. I believe there's going to be 3 in total. So I've read the whole of the first book. The next one doesn't come out until next year, but I've got it on pre-order and I'm really excited to read that. So yeah, I definitely recommend Search and Destroy, and I don't hold it against Chris Off My Shelves anymore for making me buy it. I say making me, persuading, you know. So the last book on this list of things that I remember reading in September is Watchmen. This was something that I felt kind of inspired to revisit after seeing Jake and Jordan from The Brave and the Boys. They started doing like a reread of it, and they did a video covering issue 1. And I thought, I should probably go back and reread this. It's been, I want to say 18 years nearly since I last read Watchmen. So it's been a while. I've had just the trade paperback version of it that whole time. But I just kept reading other things, or other things would take priority, or I'd just take breaks from reading. And I'd look at it and go, I should read this again one day. And then I never did, but I decided finally I'm going to work back through it again, because I really enjoyed it when I first read it. And that's no exception now. I mean, people call it the best of all time. I don't know that I would say it is the best, but it is very good. And especially if you consider when it came out, it was doing something very unique, very new. At that point, yeah, I mean, nothing was doing that. So I don't think I could do this story justice just in a short, brief description here, but I'll give it a go just to give you some context if you have never heard of Watchmen, never seen anyone else talk about it. So we follow a group of people that at one point in time were a superhero team called the Watchmen. Vigilantism and superheroism is now outlawed, but one of them gets murdered. Another one, Rorschach, who has not given up the life of being a vigilante and he's now effectively an outlaw, starts investigating, and he thinks somebody is targeting superheroes, vigilantes, ex-masked people. So he goes on an investigation, starts trying to gather the other members of the team to take this seriously and listen to him, but he's kind of seen as this crazy guy at this point, and so they don't really take him that seriously. We also don't have any superpowers in this except for one person, Dr. Manhattan. He is the large blue man that you'll probably have seen before. He is effectively a god. He can do whatever he wants, and he lives in all moments at all time. He sees the past, the present, and the future, and he lives them simultaneously. So he knows everything that's going to happen. He knows everything that has happened, at least when it comes to his own experiences. It's a really interesting mystery, and it's a total deconstruction of the superhero genre, and it really puts them into a real-world situation, and it frames it all around the Cold War and how that could be impacted by them or a lack of them. Is that a motivation for why somebody might be killing them? Are there other things going on? It's very clever. Sometimes it feels too clever for me when I was reading it, but some of the issues are spectacular. Just really draw you in. Very unique storytelling and plot devices. It's definitely worth reading. I think there's a couple of caveats I would give to somebody that's going to be reading this book. So, first up, it's Alan Moore. It's dense. It's prose heavy. It's not the type of storytelling I think that happens these days. And that's not a negative thing, but if you're more like modern superhero comics, then this might feel kind of heavy. It might feel kind of dense, hard to get through. So if you're going to read it and you aren't so sure about that, just take it kind of slow, read an issue at a time, and then leave it a month. You could leave it a month. That's how people originally read it, right? The second thing is, if you've not read a lot of superhero comics, this story isn't going to be a deconstruction of things that you are aware of necessarily. I see it quite a lot when people online ask for, what graphic novel should I get into? I've just started reading comics. And a lot of people will say Watchmen. It's not that it's a bad recommendation, but I do think you need a bit of a foundational understanding of superhero comics, and I think a little bit of an older understanding of superhero comics. Again, not so much the modern stuff that's coming out. I will confess I don't read a lot of modern superhero comics from the big two, Marvel and DC, so maybe it does still apply, but I think it's just something to consider when you're thinking about reading Watchmen. I'm sure I've forgotten something. I've started writing down the stuff that I've already been reading in October. If you enjoy this and you want to see more of this, let me know, and next month I'll do the stuff that I read in October, and it should be a more complete list. I also haven't covered anything that I read digital, like on my tablet, because I read a lot digitally. It's one of my main ways of reading, especially single issues and the current ongoing things. This is pretty much just going to be a focus on the deluxe editions that I've got, the collection of things that I have. You can see some in the background. I've got a whole wardrobe of stuff here on the side. So as I'm going through it, I'll be talking about it. And again, I'm doing this because I don't want to spend a lot of time making videos about stuff that I don't enjoy, and I don't have a lot of time to make stuff even about the things I do enjoy. So this is at least an opportunity for me to cover the things that I've been reading, and then again, the good stuff and the bad stuff, and I can share my honest thoughts on it. So yeah, let me know what you think of that. This is a bit of a different format, sat down, much more conversational. I've not got this stuff scripted. All I've got written down is just the things that I remembered reading. So yeah, let me know what you think. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to like the video if you like the video and subscribe so you don't miss anything in the future. Thank you very much. I'll see you in the next one.